Hey guys, it's Red. I just wanted to make a video because a few people have been asking me to make a background tutorial, and I thought I'd give it to them. This is just my method of making backgrounds. It's not the method. Um, I'm not a professional artist. This is just what I've picked up throughout the years. And yeah, let's get started. So I'll be working on a commission today. Hopefully the commissioner doesn't mind. And what I usually do is I start out by making a thumbnail. Now what a thumbnail is a smaller version of the drawing you want to finish. So what I'll do is I'll make a little box. Oops. I will make a little box just like this. And then I'll look at what the commissioner wants. Or if you're making a piece for your own, just sketch out what you want the background to look like. I'm not going to go into perspective or anything today. I'm just going to talk about what I think about when I make a background. So the commissioner wanted a similar scene to this. So I've got my reference here. So what I'll do, I'm not going to add any bones or anything because they didn't want bones. I'm just going to start sketching out what I want the background to look like. I'll probably add in, I don't know, some rocks, some trees and stuff, just to make it look pretty. It doesn't have to be a perfect sketch. It should just be a really quick rendition of what you want the background to look like. Then usually after I'm done with the quick background, I'll do a quick little sketch of the character. This is the character, so I have the reference up whenever I need it. And I'm sort of just trying to copy this pose right here. I'm not going to copy it perfectly because Simba is a cub and this is an adult. So what a thumbnail helps with is basically seeing where you want everything to go without actually having to put in the work yet. This is just sort of like a practice stage, I guess. Now the sketch you're doing doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to fix it later. Okay, so we got that roughed in. Now what I usually do is I pick the background colors. I go to the layer underneath. And I'll just use a hard brush. And I'll start picking the colors that I want. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll look up backgrounds on Pinterest. I don't have to copy the background perfectly, but sometimes I steal colors from backgrounds on Pinterest. Not other backgrounds that artists have made, but like pictures. So I kind of like these colors. So I think I'm going to go with something that looks a little like this. Don't be afraid to color pick, because it's a real image. You're not stealing anything. This is just nature. So what I'll usually do, say this color is the ground, and I'll usually adjust the colors as I go. Oh, I didn't do this on this commission, but it is important to start out with the sky, just so you know where your color gamut is. Basically, what a color gamut is everything that is in the image will be converging to this color here. That's a little more complicated. That's called atmospheric perspective. We're not really going to get into that today. But if I were to make these distant mountains, let's say, and I wanted these distant mountains to be this color, what I would usually do is I'd go in with this color. See, those are distant mountains. Then I'd lower the opacity, and it looks like they're farther away because they're converging into that blue. But we're not going to do that today. Talk about that some other day, maybe. I like the sunset color. So I'm gonna go ahead, maybe do something like this. And what you want to remember in backgrounds is that the further you get from the camera, quote unquote, the lighter everything becomes, and the closer you get, the darker everything becomes. So let's say this is looking a little flat. So what I could do to make it look a little more realistic, give it a little more depth, is I go down to a darker color. You don't always want to go down just to black, because that looks muddy and gross. Let's say if I went just down like that. That doesn't really look appealing. So what I do is I go down in the color wheel, and then I'll go over into the red, because this is going to be a warmer color. Sometimes this rule doesn't apply if you want a more gritty feel to a piece, or if like I've found that ground usually doesn't get redder as it gets darker. It usually gets muddier. So it'd actually be a good idea to not do this. Again, these are just block-in colors of what the final piece is gonna be. That looks a little too dark, so I'm gonna lighten it up a bit. As you get further away from the camera, this is gonna become lighter and sort of mix with this color gamut if you want to. Since we're basically on a hill, this isn't gonna mix. If there were mountains in the back maybe that were further away, we would see it mix with this color. But for now, I'm just gonna do a lighter color. I'm gonna move it towards the yellow a little bit, see how that looks. Now I'm just gonna block in the rocks and the trees. Again, the further away an object is, the lighter it will be. So I'm gonna lighten up this rock here just a little bit. And let's block in the tree. I don't like that color. We could use the colors from this too, if you would like. It's a little dark, so I might go in, try to get a highlight color like that. That's better. Sort of block in. Maybe we can get a lighter color from here. I don't see many trees far away. Oh, this one. But that's a darker color. So what I'll do is I'll take this color, go on another layer, just add that, maybe just lighten it just a little bit, grab that color, turn it all the way to 100 opacity, lock the layer, and then color it in. Do that for the rest of the trees. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna grab some green, this green color, or it's more of a beige, because of color theory, you know. But it looks green to us. I'm gonna go in, that's a little close to the trunk color. That's better. I'm gonna do the same thing I did. Make it a little lighter. Grab that color. And here's another thing to remember. Once things get further away, the less contrast it'll have. So what that means is the lights will be lighter and the darks will be darker. So these colors are very close to each other in value. While things get closer to you, there'll be more contrast, which means the darks are darker and the lights are lighter, if that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. I think I'm going to add a little bit of grass. We chose the grass color from this to be the ground color. Maybe this will all be grass. So I'll choose a ground color from here, maybe put in some ground spots. Just like that. So here's a problem I have sometimes. If I don't like a color I'm choosing from my reference photo, I'll just make up my own color that I feel like looks good. So I feel like this for the ground is a little too muddy and a little too dark. So let's push it a little lighter, maybe more towards yellow. That's a little close to the rock color, maybe to saturate a little bit. And there you go. I like that ground color a little more. Kind of want to be sparse with the ground. And there we go. So I feel like this thumbnail is pretty much done. I'm not going to color in the character because that'll take too much time. So what I'll usually do now is I'll take a screenshot of this, just like this. And then I'll have it somewhere on my canvas, just to reference back to later. And I'll usually, let's see, this is the sketch layer. I'll usually merge all the color layers together. Then I'll take the sketch layer of the background and the character sketch. I'll select that, copy, paste, and I'll stretch it out to the size that I want it to be on my canvas. I use a very big canvas. It's about 6,000 by 3,375 pixels. I just like a big canvas to work on. I don't like getting pixelated when I zoom in, so that's just me. And what I'll usually do is I'll put these layers right here into a folder and I'll hide it, just so I'm not distracted by it because I got it right here. Okay, so now we got our colors chosen and we have our background sketched out and our character. So now what I do is I usually hide the background, then I'll start working on the character. So I'm going to do that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so the sketch is done. So what I'll usually do once the sketch is done is I'll grab the colors from the background and I'll start blocking them in. So usually what I like to do with ground is I'll go in with a softer brush and I'll just lay in the highlights and the shadows. Whoops. Let me turn this down a little bit so I can see how I'm working. And then I'll take some of the mid-ground color and I'll add it to the shadows just a little bit. Do the same with the highlights. And that'll be the ground for now. I'm going to start blocking in the rocks. I've decided I'm just going to keep this ground and not keep it grass like I thought I was going to. This makes it easier for me. Though if you guys want a grass tutorial, I'd totally be down to give it to you. Okay. Now for the leaves, what I usually like to do is I'll take this textured brush. It's called Dirt. I'll leave the settings up for you guys to look at. This is Paint Tool Side 2 I'm using, but the settings are in Paint Tool Side 1, but they should work fine for 2. So I'll go in, oops, on the wrong layer. There we go. I'll just put some texture in. Do the same over here. And also go in with this brush, Dust. Again, I'll leave the settings up for you guys. Just to get some more volume in there. You don't want a lot of detail in things that are farther away. So I just really quickly rough that in. Okay, now that I got all my colors blocked in, I'm going to hide this. I can always bring it back if I want to reference the sketch again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start rendering the ground. So what I usually do is I take a textured brush, just like this, the dirt, and I go in with a darker color, usually the shadow color, and I just start putting in the texture, just like that. Again, less detail for the further you get from the camera. And I'll just grab the colors and I'll put in some texture just wherever I see fit. Grab a different brush just for variety, just so it doesn't look flat, using the same brush over and over. I also have this rock brush here. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll take this brush, sort of painterly brush. I'll go in, I'll start making some hard edges. You can use any brush you want, whatever brushes you're comfortable with. These are just the brushes that I use most for backgrounds. Now for the area under the rock, I'm going to darken the color. I think this is called ambient occlusion, where you have your darkest darks right up against an object. I'll put that there. And I'm going to use this brush to blend it out a little bit, just so it's softer. There we go. Do the same thing over here. And then what I like to do is I like to take this low opacity grass brush, and I usually use it for grass, just like it says, but sometimes I like how the low opacity looks on it, so I'll just go in and make some rough textures like this. Since it's at such a low opacity, you get a lot of very subtle color shifts. Sometimes I'll lower the opacity too. I can bring it up if I want to as well. Sometimes I'll use it as a smaller brush just to get in those little teeny tiny textures. I'm not going to use the same color as this for the ambient occlusion over at this rock, because this rock is further away. So I'll just take this shadow color and I'll start rendering in a little shadow for the tree. Maybe a little darker. Just to really sell it that it's a shadow. There we go. Then I'm going to take this color, just a little bit darker than this color. Just a little bit. Because again, it's less contrasted the further we get away. There we go. I'm going to add a little bit more texture in there. It's always a good idea to flip your canvas too, just to get a new view on what you're doing. Okay, I think that's the ground done, pretty much. So I'm going to move on to the rocks. So for rocks, what I like to do is, again, I'll take a texture brush, just like this one. Go in maybe with a darker color. Just start putting in some texture. Trying to remember where my shadows are. I'm going to say the sun is directly above. And then I'm going to grab this color, bring it up, and bring it towards the yellow. See how that looks. There we go. Now I'm just going to put in some hard edges with this brush again. And then, sometimes what I like to do is I'll take the darkest color and I'll lighten it just a bit. Maybe bring it towards the red. And add some bounce lighting just on the shadows, just so it looks a little more real. And add texture again, because we lost some in the rendering process. Okay, I think that rock is done. So I'm going to go ahead and render the rest of them. Okay, since these rocks are a little farther away, what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna make my shadow color super dark, and I'm not gonna make my highlight color super light. Maybe I'll make this rock just a little darker since it's under the tree. So what I'll do is I'll do a clipping mask or clipping layer. I'll add a new layer on top of this layer of the rock. And then I'll check clipping group. I'll take a shadow color, maybe this color. I'll go over it, then check multiply. Okay, now I'm going to start working on the trees. And with the trees and the rocks, it's basically the same method that I use. Going with the texture for the shadows and the highlights. Then I'll just start making some bark textures with this low opacity brush. Just make it a little more subtle. You want to follow the tree. You don't just want to go willy-nilly with your textures. You want to follow the tree and the trunks and where they're going. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the rocks. I'm going to add just a little bit of a lighter color, maybe cooler, to the very back of the shadow. Or maybe it'll be red because, or maybe yellow, this color. Because the sunlight is bouncing off of this and coming up here. So it's going to cast this light onto the tree. Okay, I think that looks good. I'm going to render the rest of the trees now. Okay, the trees are done. I'm not going to render these ones back here because they're going to be blurred. So now I'm going to work on the leaves. I'm going to go back to my color reference image. And I'm just going to take this brush again and sort of add volume. Now go in with the texture again. Just add shadows. And then add some highlights. Bring it towards the green. Then what I like to do is I take this grass brush, bring up the opacity, then I'll take this light color, and I'll just start putting some leaves in there. Just wherever I see the light color. I like to put some light colored leaves in the mid-tone color too, just to give it some depth. Then what I like to do is I take this mid-ground color and I'm going to go into the shadows. And I'm just going to add some texture. Maybe add some darker leaves in the shadows too. I think that tree's done. Sometimes what I like to do is I add a layer above the leaves. Click clipping mask or clipping group. Multiply. Get a nice shadow color. And then just block in some shadows. Maybe that blue is a little too. Let's go redder. Okay, that's pretty much done. So then what I'll do is I'll take these trees, merge them together. Then I'm just gonna go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And we're just gonna blur them like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our ground layer, unlock it. Then I'm going to select just the top. I'm going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and blur it right up with the trees. And then you'll see there's like a little hard edge where I blurred it. So what I'll usually do is I'll take my Gaussian blur brush and just blend it out. And I think I'm going to add a shadow right under the character here. Get a sort of reddish purple color to fit with the environment. Go to multiply. Just add a shadow right underneath them. Sometimes what I like to do with my shadows is I like to lock the layer, then take like a brighter color, and then just around the edges, softly brush in that color. I think it looks nicer that way. Here we go. Then I'm going to add in some dust. So the character is kicking up a little dust. Take a light color. Just go in with my airbrush, just sort of block in the dust. And erase what I can, just to give it a little more texture. For dust, I like to use a big brush for the main shapes first, and then a little brush, go in and add some texture to it. Both erasing and adding. See what that looks like on screen. That looks good. Lower the opacity a bit. And then once, I usually only do this when the piece is finished, but I'll show you guys now. What I like to do, just to give the background a little more depth, is I'll take a black color and I'll use a gradient. Just put a little gradient at the bottom, just like that. There we go. That's the background pretty much done. Here's the finished piece. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you want any more tutorials like this, just let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye!